on?
Yeah, have Todd do it.
Hey, Frank, we on?
Freaking brilliant.
I just did they had me call out in New York that I know that.
Well, we might need some.
I'm a member of Beta Honor Society. It's one of the
Well, you're 6. I only needed 6.
Oh, you need 6. You don't need 6. You know, there's no
yeah.
attendance for this. Even though we take,
if they wanna come.
even though we take it, this is just a workshop. So
I'm just wondering how my committee at home. Mechanics.
you've been doing good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, yeah, you don't need to have 6, you just have 1, that's all you need. Okay. It's a workshop, so. We'll keep it on tape.
Yes, sir.
Attendance and everything.
Yep. It's helping me out with normal.
Anything, yeah.
They're more interesting.
I wish it would. I miss that. That's well, their overhead is way down.
Now it's coming to appointed time of 5:30 for the February 2nd, 2023 budget summary. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, would you take the roll real quick?
Will do, Alderman. Alderman Redpath.
Here.
Alderman Gregory.
Here.
Alderman Williams.
Here.
Alderman Fulgenzi. Alderwoman Purchase.
Here.
Alderwoman DeCenso. Alderman McMenamin.
Here.
Alderwoman Connolly.
Present.
Alderman Donlin.
Here.
Alderman Hanauer.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, a quorum is present.
Never what?
You're on.
Thank you, sir. All righty. Chief, Deputy Chief. All right, we are ready when you are, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Sirs. Ma'am.
Sorry, I took away your leg. Short staff. It's drawing my attention. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate the opportunity to come, and I thank you to each of you for your support and confidence in the Springfield Police Department. Each of you have expressed your desire to keep our community safe through the deployment of professional police response force. And as we look towards the fiscal year 2024, I'm encouraged by the great work that takes place on a daily basis, and I stand unwavering in my support for the men and women of this agency who make it their mission to protect and serve all the residents of Springfield. And so before we begin with the slides, I'd like to make a few introductions. At the table tonight is Assistant Chief Josh Dunkel, Deputy Chief Don Mumal. In the back of the room, we have Deputy Chief Andy Dodd, Commander Sarah Pickford, Commander Joe Beal, Xavier Rice, who's our telecommunications manager, and the most important individual as far as this budget is concerned, that's Bianca Clark, and glad to have her. I did make it a point to keep the slides to a minimum, and I'm really going to go at about a 30,000-foot view as far as the object class is concerned. So obviously, if there are questions along the way, we'd love to have them. So I will begin. I'd like to start with just one slide on our 2023 accomplishments. I think it's important to talk about what we've done in my 1 year, 10 as Chief of Police here at Springfield. So this is calendar year 2022. We hired 42 officers, and that brought our total number of current officers up to 235. Our authorized strength as it stands right now is 253, and we'll discuss that momentarily. But this is the most officers that have been hired annually in my 25 years of service here. Some other accomplishments for 2023 include our reduction in violent crime, shootings, and shots fired. Our shootings were actually decreased by 50% We went from 68 shootings in 2021 down to 34 shootings in 2022, and that says a lot about the men and women of the Springfield Police Department and their proactive response. To go along with that, record number of firearms recovered, well over 500 recovered, and a lot of that was in part due to the license plate reader program that was put in place citywide, and I thank you all for your support on that. That's been a great and useful tool. It's just advanced our agency leaps and bounds as it pertains to our investigation. You heard about the iLEAP accreditation a couple weeks ago. We achieved Tier 2, which is the highest tier status. There's only 53 agencies in the entire state that have the iLEAP tier accreditation. I hope this shows our continued support to professionalism, here at the Springfield Police Department. Finally, we accepted several grants and funding to include a pilot program signed by the governor, $3.1 million for homelessness, co-responder program that is in the works. Our $500,000 co-responder program for mental health. We actually had a mental health social worker that began riding with our officers just last week, so that program is off the ground and running. Additionally, received $100,000 in grants from Senator Durbin to fund an extra mile of the shot spotter. And finally, our focused deterrence program, we received a $270,000 grant, which will be getting that rolling out very soon. All right, let's move on to the workforce real quick. We've been fairly steady over the last several years. For last fiscal year, we're at 253. I am asking for an additional sworn member of the agency to bring us to 254. This will be to add an officer to our training academy. If there's one thing that I focus on throughout this budget, one of the big components is training. We see what goes on around the country. It's important to ensure that our officers have all the training that we can to ensure that we have subject matter experts in place to deliver that training. And with the Let's Be Safety Act mandates, there are a cumulative over 112,000 mandates that must be met amongst all our officers total. So there's a lot of work, and it's important that we have the right people in place to ensure that that happens. So I'm asking for a headcount increase of 254. So currently, our sworn is 253. Authorized, we are at 235 that we have on the department. That would include 29 females, or 12%, 24 black officers, or 10%, 8 Hispanic officers, or 3.4%. Although we have 235 on the payroll, keep in mind we have about 20 of those that are in some form of training. We have others that are gone due to military obligations and some that are out with injury. So we're actually closer to the 200 number when it comes to officers and squad cars. I'd like to make a quick push. We are testing. I know I've issued the information to each one of you, but I would hope that you do your best to help recruit. The deadline to apply is February 12th, and we'll be hiring in May and September to get these numbers increased. So. Next is our civilian workforce. This does say that we're reducing this number by 1 from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. I'm actually asking for a floor amendment change to add back that individual spot. We're looking for a communication liaison position. I think it's our goal here with the agency that we have someone that can help us define and refine what exactly our brand is. One thing that I say quite often is we as police, we have cop brains and we think like cops. I need someone in this agency, a civilian, that can help market what exactly it is that we do and showcase the great things happening with Springfield Police Department. There's one thing that I hear quite frequently. It's, I didn't know you guys did that. I've never heard about that program. I'd love to have someone to help us market that, and I know that would take some of the work off of Director Frevert's plate in Communications Division as well. All right, from a quick budget standpoint, this is all funds. As you can see, this is a traditional majority of our funding is for personnel services, approximately 80%. Keep in mind the Springfield Police Department has several funds, a majority of which are restricted and can only be used for certain projects. Throughout this presentation, we'll be focusing on the corporate fund for general revenue. Before we get to just the corporate fund, I'd like to discuss the FY24 budget by cost center across all funds, and I draw your attention down to the box in the bottom right. To me, that's the most important one. We are actually decreasing our budget from last year by 0.5% for all funds. It's the first time since I've been in the staff that there's actually been a decrease in the budget. Next slide is the corporate fund by cost center. Again, I would look at that same bottom right box. There's another small decrease there as well. And as we go through the next slides, we'll touch on each one of the object classes, but I think it's important to note that a majority of what we're looking for centers again on two things: training of our agency and our officers, but also traffic enforcement and traffic services. There's one thing that I have heard from each one of you, as well as from the constituents at various board meetings, is that traffic is quote unquote out of control. So we're going to address that through some technology upgrades, through officers, as well as new squad cars and all that stuff that we can get out there and work on traffic enforcement. So to go through each one of these, the clicker's not working. Boy. Right? There we go. All right, so just again, this is a 30,000-foot breakdown by object class. Personal services, again, I'm asking for an increase of one sworn officer for a training academy. I believe that OBM is making an additional $1 million voluntary police pension payment, and we're asking for a slight increase in our overtime. And that object class is still down $800,000 from where it was 1 year ago. Next, we discuss contractual services. There's money in here again for the Focused Deterrence Program. The grant expires in September, and we wanted to make sure that we have ample funds to run the entire program throughout the fiscal year. So that's why that $100,000 is in there. Also, we're asking again for training of our new officers. We're looking at hiring 40 officers throughout this fiscal year. But also training for those subject matter experts on specific classes they can bring back and train our officers. There's also money in here for fair and impartial policing 2.0, we're calling it. We ran our entire department as well as some community stakeholders through fair and impartial policing this past October. It was a success. A lot of folks were very happy with that training, and we would like to bring the training back for another round at some point in this fiscal year. Finally, into the commodities section, as you can imagine, inflation has done a number on the Springfield Police Department like everything else. So our costs have increased across the board. We're also asking for an ammunition increase that goes along with the training. Obviously, the more training with firearms, that comes with ammunition increase. And from a new recruit standpoint, we've got to outfit those individuals with uniforms, body armor, et cetera. So as we hire more people, we need more money to outfit them. Next is our equipment line. Again, as it pertains to the traffic component, there's $200,000 in here to add 40 speed signs throughout the entire city. That would be 4 speed signs in each one of your ward. Alderman Gregory, I believe you have the test speed sign up and mentioned that, and I think that will be a useful tool. Again, that's just one more avenue to help address traffic enforcement in our community. We're also asking for money for a cyclical vehicle replacement plan, an annual vehicle replacement plan. If there's one thing that I remember, it was when Herman Senor was alderman, was why don't you guys have money in your budget to buy squad cars every year? And that was never an issue until COVID hit, and the cars that we were waiting for our 3-year purchase like we normally do didn't show up. So I would like to reinstitute a cyclical vehicle replacement plan, which would be purchasing 12 to 15 marked squad cars, 3 to 6 unmarked squad cars, and with that program, they would be replaced approximately every 10 years. Just some quick facts real quick. We have approximately 106 marked squad cars. The average mileage for those marked squad cars is 17,000 miles a year. However, the idle time on the engines is really the big concern. They say you could really triple that mileage just to get a true understanding of the idle time. And from a Crown Vic perspective, this one thing I mentioned, I believe it was Alderman Miniman's award meeting. We have 13 Crown Victorias left in our fleet that the age range is from 2007 to 2011. So those cars are extremely old and they need to be replaced. We owe that to our officers to make sure that they're safe in the vehicles and get rid of that old equipment. So moving on to EDP, we eliminated the one-time purchase of GTAC computers, so that reduced that line. However, As a result of the Safety Act and the purchase of, or the mandated body-worn cameras for all officers responding to calls for service, we had to increase that line by $130,000 to ensure that we met that mandate. The next object class is permanent improvements. We have a couple things here, one of which is a $40,000 for an SPD boat and an airlift. So we're lucky enough to receive a new boat last year, which is extremely important. However, the boat is big and heavy and doesn't necessarily fit in the antiquated location that it sits in. So we need to build a new dock and airlift for that boat to make sure that we can maintain that boat and don't see it get damaged as a result. And Don Mumaw is my resident boat expert, so if you have questions on that, he can answer that. Next is a $50,000 for a feasibility study. Again, I mentioned that training is paramount within this organization. I put together a 5-year plan which would include turning our current training facility into a more regional state-of-the-art training facility. That facility's been out there since 1971, and it's had some updating, but it's really time for a state-of-the-art facility to where we could host classes and people would come here. So there are a lot of unknowns as far as the location out there, floodplain, all that good stuff. So we're asking for $50,000 really to start the feasibility study to see what exactly we can have done out there. The last object class is the travel line, and again, if we're going to train our officers at a subject matter expert level, we have to send them away to receive this training. It's not something that comes here, and it's not something local. So we need to have extra money in our travel lines for lodging and per diem in order to send them off to get the necessary training to bring back. Again, I just want to touch on a few of our initiatives that we have, and maybe the first one's not necessarily a new initiative, but it's something that we're committed to and have to get back to, and that's returning our manning to optimal strength. I'd love to have all 254 positions filled in this next fiscal year, which would include reinstating a lot of our specialty positions, all of our neighborhood police officers, getting our traffic unit back to where it needs to be. We have a middle school resource officer position we need filled, and a variety of other spots. It's important that for us to be as effective and efficient as possible, we need to have all those ancillary positions filled, as well as our field operations positions. So that's goal number one. Again, I mentioned training. We have to get officers certified. Beyond officers, technology is a huge component when it comes to training. We've got an old, antiquated action target turning target system that's been at our range for, I don't know, probably 3 decades that just doesn't work, needs to be replaced. So there's money in here for that. Our TI training simulator is a state-of-the-art, almost 3D scenario-based training simulator where you're placed in a room and it's all computer-based and you have all your equipment and you respond to specific calls for service. Helps with de-escalation and whatnot. We have one currently. It's 7 years old. Again, technology is just failing on that. We need to get that upgraded to state-of-the-art. Talked briefly on the new dock and airlift for the boathouse, and then the annual marked replacement plan. So I think that these minor requests that we're asking for will keep our budget in line really with reality while providing the services at an effective level for the residents of Springfield. And that's what we're committed to. And again, that starts with having properly trained officers and equipment that's modernized who can go out and do the job, a lot of which involves traffic enforcement. So with that said, I would love to take any questions.
Alderman Redpath.
Thank you, Chief, for this. Thank you, Chief, for this this very concise budget. I got several areas I want to talk to you about. The elephant in the room is that we are struggling with our recruiting because of our salary level. I think that it's important for us to look at how much it would take to raise that salary level to be competitive to the other departments around Central Illinois. I think if last I looked, we were $10,000 lower than our next competitor. I want you to put together a proposal on what it would take to bring that up to compare with the other departments that we're looking at. We have 8 beats in the city of Springfield, and at any time, and with our 12-hour shifts, we're looking at, we could have anywhere from 13 to 20 officers on the street at one time. Is that correct?
Our minimum is, so the 12 hours are really broke up into 4 shifts, so it would be 9 and 9. So 18 officers would be the minimum that we would
But with
have.
the mandates that we're been hit with the Safety Act, we're pulling people into training. We have military people off. We have people that call in sick, which could drop us down to a lower level than that, correct?
It certainly could, yes.
And I know, and a lot of the people in this room have had, and you've heard it, about the traffic situations. In just the last couple of months, I've ran into several people who've been hit by people running red lights. And that's an area that we really can't control unless we had a red light camera, which is not legal in the state of Illinois at this time. Is that right?
As I understand it, yes, but we had some internal discussions about, what that potentially could look like, but I'd have to look at the law.
With our technology, with the shot spotter and the license plate readers, and if we maybe went to the legislature, how about our home rule authority? Would we be able to do anything with that without going through the legislature if we used our home rule?
I would look right here at Corporation Counsel on that. I don't know the answer to that.
Look, we're just throwing this stuff out there because it is a major problem. And I've known at least 3 or 4 people that have been hit with people running red lights. Red lights you got hit?
Yeah, I got T-bone.
So that would happen to you.
That's what happened.
I'm sorry. But long story short is it's a problem, Chief, and you know that.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the areas I wanted to look at. But, I think our numbers are, for a department our size, for a city this big, at 254 is too low. I really think that we should be at least at 260. And it's not a situation where we can turn the switch on tomorrow and say we're going up to 260. But we need to start gradually increasing the numbers of the police department. What people in this town think about is, are my branches going to get picked up? Is my lights going to come on when I turn the switch on? Is the fire department going to show up? And am I safe in our city? And we have an outstanding police department, but it could be better. And we're tasking our officers on these 12-hour shifts and beyond that we need to increase the numbers. Because when situations go down in downtown, I know where my beat is. My beat starts at South Grand and goes clear past Toronto Road, and that's for one beat car. Am I right about that?
Well, we'd have a minimum of 2, but yes, that's an extremely large area. You're
Yes.
correct.
And everybody's different. All the wards are different. We all have situations like that. So I want you to start thinking about increasing our top number from 254 to 260. I want you to bring a proposal. You can bring it to me or anybody you want to. Talk to the mayor about it. This is a tough situation, but we need to get our bottom number for our recruits from where we are up to comparables of the cities that are around us. If we don't, and here's the situation. If we're competing with those people, the people who are going out and taking these tests are going to say, why would I go to Springfield when I could start off $10,000 more in Peoria or Champaign or Decatur? Why would I do that? And the thing is then we're going to end up getting the bottom of the pool instead of the top of the pool. In this day and age, we can't make mistakes. Once we get people into our system, if they're not the best and the brightest, we're going to deal with them later down the line. You've dealt with them. I've dealt with them in law enforcement. We know how that works. The bottom line is that we got to start going after the best and bringing the brightest in, and so we don't have to deal with somebody when they get through the FTO program. And here we are. We found out that they're not the right fit for us, and now we're going to spend money trying to get them out of our system. So I'd like for you to do that and bring it to me or bring it to the mayor, whoever you want to bring it to. I want to see it. And tell us what it's going to cost to make that kind of change. I know we're in the middle of negotiations. It's a tough time to do that. But, the bottom line is that if we don't change this, we're not going to get the brightest and the best. Okay? So.
I appreciate that, and I have a few comments, I think. And so this is my second time I've been up here doing this myself, only 1 year as a chief, and we've raised the head count from 250 to asking for 254. So I certainly don't have a problem doing that. Continue to raise the head count. I think that's important. You know, I think that you and I have shared similar life experiences from serving our country in the 183rd to being police officers for well over 25 years. And you know what it's like to strap on a body armor to go to work every day, never knowing what's around the corner, never knowing what danger lurks, the tragedies that you have to deal with, missing holidays, missing kids' birthdays, working overnight. I get all that. There's, in my opinion, no price to put on the priceless and heroic acts of those that serve law enforcement. And I believe that the capital city, you know, people should want to come work for us for a myriad of factors. I hope the first factor is that they see the trust and the confidence that the chief has in them. I think that's important, but just as importantly is salary. I think that is extremely important. And I support a salary increase for the officers, for the sergeants, for the middle managers, and just as importantly for my senior staff that sits here today. The dedication that they put in to this job and to the citizens is second to none. So I certainly appreciate your comments, and we'll put that information together.
I think it's important, and you know, I'm not trying to put a strain on us now, but this is, if we're going to do it, this is the time for us to do it, and we got to be compatible. If we're not in competition, we're not going to get the brightest and the best, and we need the brightest and the best.
Yeah, and I think there's a few other things to discuss there. You know, the people that are from Springfield are more apt to come to Springfield. However, Springfield's not necessarily a destination city that draws, you know, 20-something police officers to work here, right? I mean, we don't, you know, it's more Lincoln-centered. So the more that we do to make our city mid-20 people friendly, however you want to say that, the better off we'll be, I think. And, you know, a lot of, you mentioned the 12s. I will say this. We've hired, I don't know, 60 people since the 12s were instituted. The young people like the 12-hour days. They like having, you know, only working essentially half the year's what it
From
was.
what I hear, probably around 60% are liking it, and some are don't.
Yeah.
But I get that. But it's a way a lifestyle set up when you're scheduling those 12-hour shifts. And some guys say, no, I like the 8-hour shifts. But you know, I get that. And be honest with you, you guys jumped to the front of the table during the pandemic when everybody else was kind of reluctant. You adjusted your schedule to hold down your overtime, and I applaud you for that. You did a great job on that. So please don't misunderstand. There's no criticisms coming out of my mouth about the police department, because you know I live and breathe law enforcement. That's the way it is, and I'm going to support you no matter what. And this is a tough call for us to try to make a move like this at this time, but we got to be compatible. We got to, and if we're not, then we're gonna suffer in the end. So please do that. And you know, I can tell you, I've been hearing about the state police who are struggling just like we are, who are raising theirs up enormously. I can't give you the number on it, but I know they're going way up to try to draw them away. And we're all in the same pool. We're all the conservation police, the state police, the Secretary of State police, the county, the cities. We're all fighting for the same recruits. We all know who's coming out of the academies, who's coming out of college that we want to get. So we just got to be in the fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Alderman Downland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, appreciate the presentation, appreciate all the hard work that you and the men and the women of the department do. It is so important to the safety of this community, and I can't say enough about what you do and how you do it. Just a couple of questions really about, you know, you hear these people say these things, and it's the budget time's an opportunity to ask this question. You know, I remember back in the day when we had, you know, 200 plus test takers. What was it last time?
Trying to think. I think it was closer to 60 that signed up and maybe 40 that passed, and we end up with a list of 30, and you know, 10 of them might not pass the background. So we're exhausting a list every time we go to hire.
So the numbers have changed dramatically. Is that consistent with departments all over?
Nationwide is consistent. I mean, look what's going on around the country. It's, you know, people don't want to do this job for a myriad of reasons, and I think that's certainly showing by who comes to take this test, by some of the early retirements that we're experiencing. I mean, people are just, it's a difficult career field, and you know, I applaud the men and women that want to do the job and that have continued to do the job. But yeah, it's difficult. I will say this, from what I've heard from a lot of our comparables, we're actually in better shape as far as the number of people that come take our tests. Yeah. Wow.
So Alderman Redpath alluded to it, I think, pretty succinctly, so I'm not going to belabor it too much. But, you know, Do you have the data, I'll just ask, do you have data already that shows where we are, not only the salary-wise, with our comparable downstate municipalities? And, you know, from year one on, that would show us as a group, you know, what the gap is, because clearly there's a gap. It's been brought up too much.
I don't have the specifics with me.
Not tonight, but you have that information you can share with us, right? Okay. I mean, I too would support such a thing. I think it only makes sense. You know, you got to think we have all these things going on at once. The number of potential officers are way down, and then you have, you know, the salary gap, so to speak. And I wanted to ask specifically though, what's the department experience in as far as retention of officers? Is it worse than ever? Is it about the same as it's always been? Where are we with that?
Well, I could break that down in a couple different points. I think number one, the younger officers that are applying for this job and taking our offer see it really more as a lot of them see it more as a job than a career. Like when I took this job, this is all that I wanted to do, and I knew I was going to spend 25, 30 years here. I think this generation that we see, it's more about, I'm going to try it out, see if I like it, see if there's something else. So we lose some on the front end for that. From a long-term retirement retention, there are some issues that constantly get brought up. One of them is retiree insurance. We have a lot of people that retire earlier than expected because they need to go get another job, presumably with the state, so they could ultimately get the state's retiree insurance because of how cheap that is compared to the state. So those are the two ends of the spectrum that I'm seeing.
Well, what I think would be helpful, and I know you well enough to know you've already done a lot of this work, so this is an easy ask, but I'd like to talk to you offline about outside-the-box ways to attract officers for lateral entry, and outside-the-box ways to, you know, obviously, as Alderman Redpath, salary is one thing, but what other kind of incentives could we offer to get younger, get the numbers up and get the younger officers in the door? And you know, keep them here, of course. And obviously, you're not going to have to answer that question tonight, but I'm sure you've looked at things like that. We can talk about that offline, but it seems to be something that would help your cause.
I would like to, if I could, comment just a few minutes on.
You're wearing the badge. You can comment anytime you want.
I have to give props to our recruiting team led by Commander Pickford and Sergeant Chris Rhodes. Those two have done a lot of the outside-of-the-box methods as it pertains to recruiting that typically we had to come up with on our own. They started a candidate fitness program to bring potential candidates in, let them work out for free to make sure they're in shape. This generational recruiting efforts through District 186 and the Career Center and Lincoln Land, mentoring services that we're establishing through the outlet, the Boys and Girls Club, and various other groups. I mean, their goal and my goal as the CEO of the organization is to, you know, start recruiting people young, and it's a long-term process, but that's necessary. You mentioned incentives. We have a $5,000 relocation incentive for laterals. We actually are getting ready to pay out the very first one in the next few weeks as soon as that gets processed. We have incentives for our own officers to recruit. If our officers go recruit a new officer or a lateral officer, we'll pay our officers. So again, you know, we don't just have a recruiting team, we have a department full of recruiters.
How's that lateral bonus compared to other departments? Is it?
It's lower, I would say. Well, I know that some of our comparables are higher than that. I don't know nationwide, but.
Well, and on top of what you mentioned, and I knew of some of those, not all of those, but, you know, the minority recruitment efforts and the ongoing outreach to the community, I know is very much appreciated and extremely important. You know, I was amazed when I looked at the budget, though, that even with the equipment increases, what I'm trying to say, a significant number, that the overall budget is decreased. So I think maybe there's some room there to, and I'm not sure what the proper way is. I got to be careful here because I know things have to be bargained, but what Alderman Redpath said about the salary is something that we really need to look at, and I know it obviously would impact these numbers. You know, the speed sign issue we bring up all the time because we hear from our constituents about that. I'm glad to see that's in the budget. That's much appreciated. And Chief, I just encourage you all to keep up the good work, and I know you've always been available, you and your team, when I have issues, minor and major, and just thanks for everything you do.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Alderman McMiniman.
Chief, this is a solid budget request. I think some of your focus will help with recruitment and retention. The equipment request, very significant. Travel for training, those are all significant additions to the budget and well thought out, and several others here. I've got and as far as salary comparables, our human resources, one of their functions is to do comparables. I'm sure we're above Chatham, Rochester's, Pleasant Plains, and that can be a source of recruitment. We need to find out how we're doing against Bloomington, Decatur, Champaign, Peoria, et cetera, and not just the first year, but after 4 years, make sure we've got the right comparables going. I've got one question and then one other comment. The speed radar detectors, are they all overt, or are any of them covert?
The ones that we're purchasing here would all be overt. So these are the ones that people are going to see and hopefully be that visual reminder that I should slow down at this point.
Okay, I think we need both. And this has been a frequent complaint, from our residents. They say there's speeding going on, and we put an overt radar detector out there, and everybody slows down, and then we look at the data, and we go, oh, wait a minute, everyone's, So you see where I'm going with this. We need some overt measures of how much noncompliance there is for the speeding. And I hope that we don't need an amendment to the budget to this to make this happen. You got $200,000 there. It may be that the covert detectors are less expensive than the overt. And maybe, think how to best do that. I don't know if you want to put a public works sign on those overt detectors or trailers, whatever you need to do, but we need some objective data out there because it's a very serious speeding problem. I saw one today. I'm driving on Monroe, and someone goes right across Monroe from the stop sign, never stopped. The accident was maybe 3 feet separation there, so it is a serious problem. We need to really focus on that. And so that's my comment. You don't need to respond. Please think about it, and if we can, I don't know what budget line that comes under.
Can I offer a quick response? We do have 2 covert traffic data collectors that we use for that specific instance you're talking about. We get a complaint of speeding in the area. We put those up to get a true test of what the data will show. I think, from a traffic enforcement perspective, there are several ways to combat that. One of which is covert stuff, one of which is overt, one of which is obviously officers in squad cars in position. So, yeah.
And then the one comment I'm going to make, and it'll lead to a supplemental appropriation amendment that I hope the council will support. The pension funding for this year, as you probably noticed, is a decrease from last year. And I know how that happened, and we've talked about it with Mayor. The Mayor saw it and asked Bill McCarty to fix it. And I think it was too late in the budget with all the paperwork to fix it at that point in time. But the decrease is kind of is due to a fluke. We do the actuarial required contributions a year ago. That's when the numbers are based on. What the fund balance is for the pension funds a year ago. And a year ago, the markets were still kind of at a high. It was before the NASDAQ declined by 30%, S&P 500 by 20%, Dow Jones Industrials by 10%. So we're looking at a fund balance in the police and fire pension funds that would look really good when they did the calculations for what we should contribute. But then they all tanked. They came way down. And so we're basing the contribution on old numbers, basically. So I looked at what we contributed last year on the police side, and it was $15.5 million. And this year, the budget is asking for $14.7. So the difference is $744,000. I'm going to ask for the council to contribute this coming budget year what we contributed last budget year, and I hope it gets unanimous approval. And so that's my comment. I'll make the same thing for fire. I think there's a differential there too. So thanks for your report and the great work that our police have done, particularly the last 3 years under very difficult circumstances.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Alderman Hanauer.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to let you know, my request to speak, I can't see anything, so I'm probably on there 5 times or whatever, but I can't see, so it doesn't let me know. I will have to say, I agree, if each ward's getting so many of those, the overt signs, I hate those things, really. I don't know, you guys probably know the data better, but does it really deter speeding when you take them out?
Yes.
Because I would rather I'd rather get one or two of the stealth devices so we can move them around in my ward, and just so we can have consistent traffic stuff. You guys have been great whenever I've needed a traffic study, and my feeling with the big signs is you're either going to get people to slow down so you don't get through, or you're going to get people to speed up to see how fast they can get the sign to come up, and so you don't get true data. So I agree that I think if I have my say so, I would like to have at least one for my ward where we can spread around. And I know it takes a lot of work for people to do the analysis in that, but I like having them because it's just a way when people are complaining, and there are some speeding issues, but there's a big perception that there is, and we haven't seen a lot of it. We just have a lot of people thinking that it is in certain neighborhoods. So the LPRs, at first when we started getting those things, I wasn't quite sure whether they were good, and after we've caught some things, I really have jumped on board with that. One of the things I'd like to come up with is a way that we could offer to neighborhood associations and say, I'll tell you what, they're $2,500, and say, here's the deal. If you guys want to buy, if this is our assessment, you need 2 of them because because of the way your neighborhood's configured. If you guys want to buy them, you pay for them, and then we take over the annual cost or whatever, and it's a way for us to save a little money on the upfront, and it may get more out there in the future, because I know, I've got some neighborhoods that have one way in, I've got some that have 2 ways in, so they would be, real easy, and then maybe what it does is it allows us to catch these people that are going around car surfing all the time, trying to grab stuff out of cars, and I just think it might be something that we could offer. I don't know how much people would jump on it, but it is something that we should offer. So, the red light cameras, if we have to go to legislature, I think we should. We got a real bad problem in this town. I don't know how many accidents are from running red lights. It'd be interesting to see a study on that, because we have a very bad problem, and there's a lot of intersections we could put them on, and I don't care. I think one of the things that got people in trouble was, well, first of all, there was some funny business going on, but one of the biggest complaints I think people had in Chicago was they were catching people on right on red, not stopping completely in that. I don't really give a dang about that. It's about going straight through. That's the ones I want to get, and I really think that's something we should look at, and we may have to go to Larry about that through the legislature, but I think it's something that we should explore. I will tell you this: we may solve some budget problems next year if we can get them in place. How many? Do you guys know approximately how many officers will be eligible to retire in the next 5 years? And have we tried to kind of estimate how big a classes we need to just keep up with that?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers with me. That is something that we track. The one thing I don't want to have happen is this sort of ebbs and
Right.
flows with, I want to try and keep us consistent. The mayor's given me the permission to overhire, kind of anticipating retirement. So, and they only offer classes at McClatchy 3 times a year, so we have to really work around that. But one thing that we started doing a couple years back, we offer an incentive, a financial incentive, if our officers tell us that they're leaving 1 year out. So that kind of gives us a little bit of leeway to work with. But
Because one of the things that, we were talking about recruitment and retainment and that, one of the things that we have to understand is we got to make sure that we stay on, we're on the same level as our competitors, because what's it cost to send someone through the academy?
well, the cost is I think $7,000 is a pretty rough estimate to go there, but then you have to obviously outfit them.
Right.
It's $4,000 just for gear. That doesn't include some other stuff.
There's
that
a
is-
sizable,
10 months worth of training with
Right.
an officer. Yes, there's a lot of money involved.
So we pay a lot of money to train people, and what we want to do is we don't want to get them trained and then a year later, however, 2 years later, they leave to go get a better job, because not only are we losing in cost, but it's a lot of people's time, and people's time is money. And you got, when you have those guys as the FTOs, and we're training them, that's time that they have to put in, and we don't get that back. So I'm with Alderman Redpath. I think that's something that's very critical that we have to look at. As far as the rest of your budget, I applaud you. I know, everything's going up, and you guys did a good job on it, and thank you for everything you guys do.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Alderwoman Purchase.
Thank you, Chair. I echo my colleagues. Thank you for all that you all do. My other neighborhoods are so looking forward to you all getting out there, walking and knocking on doors again. But I did want to ask you about this new budgeted activity line item. It was for $216,000. It's the Connect and Protect program. Do you have a little bit of information on that you could share with us?
I'm going to let Assistant Chief Stunkel speak on that. That's the focus.
You don't have, if you need to get it back to me. You got to speak in your mic.
Connect and Protect is a co-responder grant with Memorial Behavioral Health. So that may be this year's piece of an overall $530,000 grant.
Okay. And then my second question is, it goes with everyone talking about salaries. I saw, like, in your last year budget, you had $23 million for regular salaries, but I think you are saying you're only going to spend $20.7, which leaves you with a $2.4 million less than the original proposed. Why is that?
That's because we have a lot of vacancies, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, if all 253 officers were in squad cars, that's what it would cost us, is what the projected budget was, and then the final is really what we're going to end up with based on the fact that we've had that many vacancies.
Okay, and then are we seeing some more increase in minorities come for the test and come and train?
Yeah, and I think, our minority recruiting is very important, and that goes back to Commander Pickford and Sergeant Rhodes and the relationships they've established, but also the relationship we've established with key stakeholders in our community, from faith groups to civic organizations. I think it's important to, like I've mentioned several times, develop that trust and confidence so that we get quality candidates to come take the test. I don't have any numbers. Again, we're testing. The application period is open right now, so I'll have some firmer numbers on how many, what the breakdown is after February 12th. But there's certainly, I can think of a handful of qualified and competent minorities that have already applied. So
More women coming out? Do you see more women increasing?
The women, the female numbers are down slightly. I will say that the class that we anticipate hiring in May has a lot of females in it. Now, there's still several processes they have to get through for that, but I think overall nationwide, the numbers for women in law enforcement have been decreasing a little bit.
Okay. My last final question, these numbers are a lot to process, so I have to take notes. But I saw, like, for example, the police retirement contribution is going down at about $750,000. Are we, like, reinvesting those?
I think that's what Alderman McMenamin was talking about, was
His amendment?
pension money. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I look so forward to that amendment and you voting for the budget this year. I thought that's a good win.
Yeah, I'll give it 2, yeah.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Conley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief, and thank you to all your staff who've come in tonight. Certainly appreciate you here. I hope we're not adding too much to this 1.7 million overtime right now.
Not with us sitting here, unfortunately. They would say unfortunately.
Yes, I get that. You know, we've had a lot of conversation tonight about new recruits. I second or third or fourth, I think, Alderman Redpath's request that we really make some investments into raising that initial salary rate, because I think that is critical, that we're not just competitive because of the city, and yeah, we need to do a whole lot for Springfield to make it attractive for those 20-somethings. I've got a couple in my family I'd like to have move back here. But a particular concern to me is, you know, I've seen over the last few years, and more than a few years, the quality of the officers that we currently have. And so I'd like to make sure that when you're looking at that, we're also looking at ways to creatively and financially incentivize people to stay. We've talked about this before, and obviously there are contracts where this comes into play, but I would certainly encourage you, as part of this budget request, in addition to what Alderman Redpath has asked for higher salaries for starting, that be reflected upwards through your ranks, and that the concept of retention bonuses, you know, maybe that's something that's non-pensionable, you know, it's a one-time, you know, a 5-year, a 10-year, a 15-year. We have a lot of training and experience in quality officers, and I'd like to see that we keep them and show our appreciation for the work that they do. So just, again, keeping that as something that's on your mind, and that you know that at least the council is looking to see maybe a little more numbers that would go along with that. Second, the next thing, I'm very impressed with the training. I'm impressed with the emphasis and focus that this department has on training. I like plans. If you haven't noticed that about me, I like to see things looking forward and making improvements. And so I'd be very interested to know, you know, a little more about what you're looking for this 5-year plan for the training facility. I assume you've got it, and we don't need to go into tons of details now, but I'm wondering, is part of that, would that kind of an investment where we're increasing our training facility, making it stronger and making it a regional draw, would that then generate fees and training costs from other departments that would be kind of pay us back for that investment? Is that what you're looking for?
I think that could certainly be the case. There are also organizations, LETAC and some other ones, law enforcement organizations, that potentially we could house them in this facility as well, and maybe share the cost when it comes to whether it's building or they rent the space, something like that. Yeah. So there's.
I think that's great. I mean, that's the kind of creative, forward-thinking planning where you're looking to how we can maximize our resources and also partner with other agencies. I really appreciate that. I think it's important for us to maintain the health and stability, not just of our department, but actually to grow it in a way. We know that relationships with other agencies and, you know, the more interactions you have with other departments, I'm assuming that the quality that we have here can be reflected out, and then we also get a little bit in return. So,
Well, and I would just say this. We are the capital city of the state of Illinois. We should want people to come here, in my case, law enforcement officers to come here for training, because this should be the regional training hub, in my opinion. So that's certainly our goal.
And I agree with you 100%. Yeah. So the other thing, you know, you did mention cars, automobile purchases. I have been a little bit squeaky on that issue. And obviously we've had some, you know, fairly unexpected delays. So can you kind of elaborate a little more? When you say the 10-year plan, are we actually expediting that a little bit right now? Because we're still waiting for those last deliveries, right?
We're still waiting for 30 squad cars
Yes.
that Ford has not manufactured yet. So when those come in, then these 13 Crown Vics will go bye-bye, and some older. Unfortunately, some of the Explorers that we purchased are coming up on 10, 11 years old. So it's going to be time to swap them out as well.
So I guess when you talk about your 10-year plan, is that factoring in all of these delays that we have, and we're not actually waiting 10 years for everything, where you're going to be adding more
No,
requests.
no, I would say that every budget from this point forward would have 12 to 15 more cars in it, so we could swap out the oldest and put new in, and then over the course of time, essentially a car would last 10 years, and at that point, it'd be time to replace it.
Okay,
is the
good.
plan.
I just want to make sure that was the plan, because I think that's a really critical investment for, our patrol officers. That's their office space.
Gotcha.
And they need to have it be safe and functional. So, and then the other issue that you raised that I wasn't actually getting from the budget, but I appreciate you bringing that up, the retirement for officers to go to the state for health benefits. I do hope that we're looking at what the city currently offers, what we can offer, to see if we can't retain some of that, when someone's at that top level and has invested a certain amount of their career in with our department, if there are things that we can't do to make sure to keep them there with our benefits too. And I understand health benefits can be expensive. I get all of that, but I will also tell you that one of the things that people absolutely look for in a community, and the things that draw people to a community, is that sense of safety, knowing that someone's going to be responsive when they need it, and that they can, feel comfortable within their own home and on the streets. And largely, a lot of that function, the overwhelming part of those functions is your department. And that's issues small and large. So when you talk about, let's grow this city and make it a more, pleasant place for you to be able to attract more young police officers, your police department is part of what we need to be using to attract more officers. So just kind of general rambling there a little bit, but again, I think Alderman Redpath made a really good point that we need to be looking at upping that minimum number of, your 254 is great. I would also support numbers at 260, so that you can, expand what you're doing and just, make it very clear this is part of us growing our city. And while there are some upfront costs to that, I think it is one of the critical components of having. We're not Chicago, we're not St. Louis, we're not a big city. We can have some of that big city feel, but people want that small city safety. And that's where your department comes into play. So I would also support seeing some more, some numbers around what 260 would look like for us, and, more creative. I know Alderwoman DeSenza wasn't here, so I am going to pick up her flag. The neighborhood police officers are huge for our city. That sense of relationship and just getting a little deeper into issues with the neighborhood is important. I've supported her when she's asked for 10 NPOs in the department, and I just want to bring it up since she's not here. I'm sure she's probably watching this right now going, that's right, 10.
Well, and I think it's important to know that there is money budgeted in the 253 number for 10 NPOs. I can't fill those specialty positions until we get enough ample manpower back on the street.
Right,
so.
and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But again, I think, you're looking at, you brought it up, military deployments, injuries, sick time. We've seen what happens with COVID, where, contagious diseases can spread very quickly. Just influenza A has been hitting people really hard this year. So I want to make sure that, police officers feel that they can take time off when they're not well. If they need, any sort of, physical, mental health issue that needs to be addressed, take that time off and get it addressed, because we have enough staff to fill those spots without stretching anyone else too much further also. So go ahead, Chief.
Can I get on my wellness soapbox for 2 minutes? That's something that's near and dear to my heart, holistic wellness for our officers, and that includes mental, physical, spiritual, financial, you name it. That's something that, with the mayor's support and the insurance committee support, we brought in Visions Consulting. They're in the process getting ready to roll out their plan for us as an agency on ways to revitalize all those sort of wellness aspects, because I think the mental health component is ever important right now for the men and women of law enforcement, period. And we're going to do what we can to ensure that our officers have everything they need, for their mental health. It's important.
I really appreciate hearing that, because obviously, we know there are stigmas around seeking treatment for mental health issues. That's at all levels, but to have that kind of an attitude from the top of our department. I certainly, I applaud you for that. We need to make sure, I'm not a police officer, if you hadn't noticed. But we do, we know what the level of stress for this job is, as much as I can. And certainly appreciate you taking that holistic approach towards health. Family time and downtime is as important for everybody. And I think it's critical to make sure that your officers have access to those services. And thank you. I really appreciate you having that as a soapbox. If you want help, I can throw my soapbox under yours and if you ever need it, so.
I like it.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief.
Alderman Williams.
Yes, sir. So do we have specialty units, like the Memphis Specialty Unit?
We do. We have a street crimes unit. It's comprised of a sergeant and 3 officers, yes.
Okay. And earlier we talked about competitor, I think way back when Alderman Redpath was speaking. So is our competitor based on geographic size of the city? Like would Peoria be the competitor?
Yeah, so there are, certain cities I would say are competition or competitors of ours, and it's based on size of the agency, size of the city, and location. And so, yes.
Okay, so do we lose ours to Peoria or to the state, or is there a number one, in other words?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Our biggest competitor in the last year and a half has been Indiana. A lot of people have vacated law enforcement in Illinois and went on to Indiana. We lost 3 officers there. State police will lose an officer or 2, maybe a handful more. They're trying to sweeten their pot to try and steal officers from municipalities, so we're dealing with that as well.
Thank you. And then finally, so walks. I keep hearing walks, and what are they? Is it a program?
Well, we do community walks. It's not necessarily a program. Essentially, again, I go back to building trust and confidence, and the best way to do that is to talk with people in non-law enforcement roles, right? So instead of having someone only interact with the police when they need the police, we like to go out, knock on doors, and say, we're just here, introduce ourselves, and what can we do to make this neighborhood a better place? And we do that. We specifically target areas, if there's been a recent rash in crime or a shooting or a particular incident, we may target that area. We may just target areas that we've been at before that, we know are susceptible to crime. I mean, I think that's the key, is developing the trust of the citizens. So they know they can call us and they're going to get someone that they can trust when they show up.
Okay. So again, I'm like Alderman DeCenso. I think it's so key for them MPOs. They do a great job. My people are real close to them, but my people were confused about seeing the advertisement of the walks because we've never had a walk. And I'm hearing the Alderwoman saying she's looking forward to a second walk, and we haven't had a first walk. So I didn't know if this was citywide. I didn't know if this was something that me as the Alderman is supposed to sign them up for, or how this happened. That's why I'm asking, is it a program, or because we surely have had everything you said that makes you want to, do this.
This is why it's important to have that communications liaison person, because we don't tout a lot of the things that we do. And that's shame on us for that, because the public needs to know where we're going to do our walks and when we've been there. And we've done, I know we've done Pillsbury neighborhood. That's been a couple of years ago. We did Johnson Park. I apologize, I can't remember who gets that, but those are a couple that we did. Harvard Park, we've done Harvard Park a couple times. Lincoln Park or Enos Park area, we've done those. So listen, my goal is to get out in everyone's ward all across the city, because the more people that we can get to trust law enforcement, the better off this city will be.
Okay, so do these walks happen on their shift, like on their regular shift, or are they scheduled like on an off day, or how do the walks fit into the work shift?
Yeah, so typically it's after the 5 o'clock hour, 4:30, 5 o'clock hour, which is when we're all off work, but we go out, and when I know that the residents are off work and coming home. The point is to talk with people, right? So timing is critical. So it's typically, you know, that 5 o'clock hour. My staff and lieutenants typically participate, so we're off work. We'll have people, maybe the MPOs or that are assigned to that beat, come in on their days off if they're not working, or we'll pull some people from the shift as well. So it's a combination of everything.
Okay, so I would just say that, you know, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. I think things are going well. I thank my colleagues, because I don't have a lot of questions, because as being last, you know, all the questions get asked. But with the MPOs, if we could just make sure we keep them, since we've had them in certain neighborhood associations, it's just really worked out great. I don't know if this is, MPO is something the police officer wants to do or not, or if it's at the bottom of the food chain or what it is, but we've had some changes, and now we're in a situation, I believe we're sharing ours, and I just don't know the management of it, but I would ask that we make sure we don't lose them and that we increase them if we can.
Yeah, I agree. I think the neighborhood police officer program is extremely important for our agency, and that's not going anywhere. Unfortunately, Officer Binkley, who's yours, is covering a couple different beats, and that's strictly because of you know, managing manpower at this point and making sure that we have ample folks answering calls for service. But yeah, the MPO is a great unit, and a lot of people enjoy participating in that, and you know, I certainly don't want to see it go away. I'm a strong proponent of it.
Thank you.
Mayor Langfelder.
Thank you. Piggybacking on that one, with regards to the MPOs, but aren't you, when you say the culture of the police department's changing, where everybody's expected to do some type of outreach, MPO work, things of that nature, so hopefully it lightens the load across the board.
Yeah, I mean, outreach is, and community policing is something that we're pushing to all of our officers. In fact, that's part of the field training program that the new officers participate in community outreach efforts, just to see that law enforcement is so much more than simply enforcing laws. You know, it's about building that engagement and that trust. So yes, it's part of our training. Yeah.
Yeah, and with the recruitment, I'm just repeating, I think, what you've told us, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Haven't we seen a greater increase of recruitment numbers in other cities of our peers throughout the state, or how would you gauge that?
Yes, sir. I would certainly say that this whole post-COVID pandemic situation, we have, again, the recruiters have done a great job of, I got a whole list of places that they've been. They've done a great job of revamping the program. We are seeing increased interest in the Springfield Police Department. You know, the only downside is that that's people that say they're interested, and then they show up and test, but sometimes get filtered out as a result of physical fitness, poor test taking, background investigation, all that stuff. So, but yes.
And one of the reasons, my opinion, a couple things. One is, when you know, going back to the pandemic, I think someone up here had said, oh, you know, when things were happening in Minnesota or whatever, and they said, we're going to, should we look at defunding the police? And we said, no, we're going to defend the police. We're going to fund them. And so the council taking that important action to support, that's your number one recruiter. Because when you talked about Indianapolis, isn't it because a lot of the concerns about these changes state legislature and things of that nature?
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
And then the other part of the recruitment, of course, I think it's the culture with regards to that, the public outreach. When you don't see, you know, you see the community working with the police department, that's a big factor. But most importantly, I think it goes to the training, because, you know, we can say they might be, as someone said, bottom of the barrel. We train our officers to be the elite people that they are. I mean, we train them through, and we, you know, the residents pay for that training, and so it's due to the hard work of the trainers and everything else. I mean, you make them the officers that they are today, because you don't know when someone comes in whether they're the elite or not. When you say that's correct, or
yeah, well, absolutely. You know, training, it takes 10 months from the day someone walks in the door to the day that they're on their own as a police officer, and they're trained that entire time frame. But that just gets you to the minimum standards, and you know, it's important from that point on throughout the rest of their career. We make sure that they get continuous training and education, because that's what makes us better people. Real quick, my mama always told me that if you're not learning, you're not living, and I think that's important words that I try and tell my kids to live by, and something that I push here at the agency.
And I think Alderman Williams brought this up with the elite group that we have with, you know, that I think it's going to go across the country with what happened in Memphis. but theirs was only in place, I think, a few years, and ours has been in place for 20 years. And it really comes down to the training, and if you could explain how you differentiate what we're doing compared to that.
Yeah, I think oversight is the key, right? I mean, that's the main thing, is that we have a sergeant embedded with our street crimes unit. They work hand in hand with one another. They're overseen by the watch lieutenant for the day, as well as they have a lieutenant in charge of the unit. You know, our officers, all of our officers wear body-worn cameras. This unit is no different. We have random body-worn camera reviews that we do. It's mandated for our agency that all use of force above normal handcuffing, the body-worn camera is reviewed by the sergeant and the lieutenant. Our street crimes unit receives extended training. We talk about training. They, you know, when you go into that unit, it's important that you understand the purpose and the point behind that. And again, that they contributed to a lot of arrests and a record number of guns being taken off our street. But you know what else they contributed to is community engagement. They were out speaking with various groups and young people about gang violence and why it's important to stay away from that and make proper life decisions. So that unit is more than just the enforcement arm, which I think is important to know.
And the salaries, I think we're in mediation with the contract. Aren't the salaries, except for these command staff, isn't that set by the union contract?
It's contractual.
Yep, and I think we did raise the base level, I believe, on that. So if you'd explain the mediation, or Director McCarty can, or the process.
I'll punt.
Because I think that's important. I mean, because we're in the budget, everybody wants to do more or what we can, but it's important that everybody understands the process that we're in.
Given the fact that we're talking about collective bargaining, we're not supposed to speak too much publicly about it. All I will say is that we have been in extended negotiations with the officers' union at this point. Several proposals have gone back and forth. We are now at a point where we are proceeding into mediation, and we will proceed with continued negotiations through that process.
And then the other thing with regards to recruitment, especially at the state level, I didn't know if the Chief of Police Association or anybody's approached the legislature about, you know, because the state is putting a lot of money at recruitment because they're pilfering usually through police departments throughout the state, and it costs us a lot of money. Is there any, I guess, approach to asking the state to reimburse us for the cost of training those individuals, because we're like their farm system. So we probably should work collectively with Larry Luster, our lobbyist, with your lobbyist, and as far as PBPA, and try to get our dollars back if they take someone within a 10-year period or 5-year period or whatever the case may be.
So we currently have a program in place that puts that onus on the actual officer who chooses to leave. There's if you stay longer than 3 years, then you're not required to pay back the cost of uniforms and training. However, if you leave within that 3-year period, there is sort of a step-down process that we do, in fact, bill the officer as they leave. So, and that is an important point.
Yep, and just a couple more. One is the controlling overtime through the contract management. I mean, we appreciate the police department, PBPA, working with the command staff to make that possible. Unlike the fire department, we try to get that to happen. So when we talk about overtime, the chief's hands are tied because it's the contract that really allows that flexibility where you can actually manage the department to a greater level. So we appreciate both sides working towards that. And then pensions, I agree with Alderman McMinimum. We should always reach that, because when we ask for the ramp to be extended, that's how we eat into the unfunded liability. We need to keep that payment level at that maximum amount as time goes. So we should look at that and make sure it's at least consistent with last year. And then the LPRs in the neighborhoods, that's a good idea, Alderman Hanauer. And I think that was about it. So thank you. One last thing. The digital, the ones that we put in the budget, what they would be is they would collect the data, so the council members can decide where they want to place them in their ward. So you put them up, you set them up, and they're portable, and these are the ones that go on the post. You collect the data, you see if there's actually speeding going on, then you move them, then you set up police officers to survey the area if people have been speeding. Or even if they haven't, you can go back and gauge it if you want, but that's how you do it. The other ones that are, we do have the more overt ones where, you know, you see the digital boards, that's already in the budget. The one we put in are the ones more on 11th Street, or taking a look at that type of design that can be moved, and you can gather the data, and that way we could deploy the police department in an effective manner with regards to that.
All right. Alderman Redpath.
So, Mayor, would you talk to Corporation Counsel about our Home Rule Authority, about the red light law? If there is such a thing, Chief, at the state level that we can't do it, to see if we could implement that?
Yeah, we'll check with the Corporation Counsel, but also with Larry Lester. We'll check both avenues.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a few comments, not to prolong the night. You know, I salute you, Chief, in your minority efforts and things. I even see Ms. Pickford back there, and I think that is will be a gateway to get more women on the force, as well as minorities. I think she does a good job. I've talked with her. I even took a picture with her. So she does a good job. I get a great feeling from her. You know, one of the things, you know, we've had some discussion about, you know, raises and things of that nature, and, you know, we'll review that. But I think there's something to be said about the training that one would get when they come here. I truly believe, I said it before, that our department's highly trained. There was a point in time where we seen some guns pulled on police and nobody was shot. So that goes to training. And, you know, we don't want people shot. We want us to use our de-escalation skills and things of that nature. So, you know, shootings are down 50%. Our community definitely feels that, as well as homicides are down, you know, almost 40%. So those are things that to be proud of from the department. You know, you know, I'll speak on this too. I don't know how many officers you added since, you know, the George Floyds at the time, but we've added black officers. So I think that goes into the testament that there's a myth that communities of color or whatnot don't like police officers. They don't like bad police officers, but they like good police officers. The Blink officer, I'm gonna mess his name up, Blinkleys of the world, and the young lady from Ward 5. They're out on social media. People are seeing them out on social media, being funny and having fun, you know, and those things are breaking some of the stereotypes, you know, on both sides of this thing. So I appreciate you guys. Keep that up. I would offer for us to look into your special fund, I call it, your cannabis fund, and sort of look at some type of incentive for our MPO officers to, you know, once we get to that level, to keep them there. I think maybe that'd be something we could work out for that. So I'm gonna move on. I don't want to be too long. I didn't have too many things. On the cadet fitness, I don't know how long that's going on, but if we do catch it in the spring or summer, you know, maybe we can go over to Cox Park and utilize the new Fit Park with some of those things, and, you know, utilize that space as well. I definitely support you getting to 254, and definitely we'll look at numbers and how 260 looks, definitely. But the 11 spots that you say you have vacant, I think, you know, if that's going to get us to 254, I support you in hiring those as well in our community. The Shot Spotter Connect was great for our community. You guys did a great job. We look forward to that. Hopefully we can work out a schedule of how that'll bounce around a little bit in the community. If we need some, you know, funding for that, you know, let me know, and I want to look to see how we can do that. I am interested when we do get to the point where we can have all MPOs of trying to have an evening shift MPO, maybe not all night, but maybe a few hours to the dusk, or, you know, night, to maybe follow up on some things that the early time MPO couldn't get to. I think in the future that will serve us well. And I know you got some good things planned. I don't want to spoil the beans as far as in the community and surprises coming forth. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you very much. If I could just end by saying I'm extremely proud of the men and women of the Springfield Police Department, and you all should be as well. They are truly great officers. You know, their heart is dedicated to this profession and this craft, and I salute them. And we have a good police force here, and I look forward to where we go in the future. So thank you all for your support.
Thank you. 5-minute bathroom break.